Well, hello there, it's Ina here, and welcome to my art room. So, I had this box or cabinet for quite some time. It's made out of wood, it has hinges and a nice closure, and a glass front, and then all these different sized compartments. So, inspired by the Halloween challenge, I want to turn this into an apothecary, but I want to give the box a new look. One thing I want to add is a top shelf. So I'm showing you where I found the piece of wood. I took this clip hanger apart, cut it in three pieces, and it works perfectly to extend the box into an extra shelf with boundary. Like always, I use my E6000 to glue everything together. Now I also had this tiny little shelf here, and I cut off the top because I realized that it was a perfect size to go into one of these bigger compartments. So here the top has dried, I sanded the edges, and now I want to fill in some of the little gaps I have and just make the whole surface look less slick and kind of blend it in with the rest of the box. And for that, I use some spackling compound from the handyman store. It works really well, it gives it a nice texture, it dries really quickly, and it's just a cheap alternative to texture paste. Here I stopped for a moment so I could add a tiny little door handle or drawer handle. Now later in this video I will show you all the photos I received of all your October 4-core art challenge projects, and then of course later on I will also give you the intro to our new November challenge. For now, as you can see, I'm still fiddling with the frame, and here it is pretty much all covered, and I also added a bit to the glass to make it look more grungy, and of course it all needs to be painted. So I start with this brown vintage wax type of paint, and I rub off some of it because I don't want it quite that dark. I want it kind of more mottled. So when I'm done with the first coat here, I actually switched to acrylic paint in a couple of different browns. I also added some alcohol ink in again another shade. That way it didn't look so freshly painted, and it has more that old worn look. I am speeding up this process quite a bit as it's very simply done. It just takes a little bit of patience and a few layers. Here at the end I used some gray, and it really gives the wood that weathered look. As you can see here, the top shelf I added blends in well, and everything looks more authentic. So the inside got a lot less layers, as I figured with the door it would have been protected from aging a bit, but of course it needs a little bit of gray just here and there. So here's the way it looks now, and even though it went very fast for you, it took me quite a while to get it to this point. Now, a dear friend of mine sent me this nice paper pack here, and it has just a perfect designs and grungy old vintage looking papers I need. So I will cover the back side first, and then all the little compartments in this vintage old looking paper. I darkened the edges using my distress ink and then my tacky glue combined with Mod Podge to glue everything down. Now usually I do the backside of all my art pieces last, but in this case I knew that I was not going to add any paints or messy things. Mainly I would have to decorate small items that will fill up the shelves. So I wanted to be done with all the paper work first. Now this box came with a few holes, so I opened up the top two, and I also added washers to strengthen them. Now it looks like I will be talking through most of the process today, but this is a nice spot for me to take a little break. So while I'm working with these papers, which is all very simple to follow, please enjoy some music. So this is the way it looks now, and I have to say I really love that old paper in those compartments. I did rip a few here and there just for an extra old looking effect. Now this tiny shelf just got some simple gray paint. Next I want to add a few additional shelves just so I have more room for extra little doodads. And for that I use craft sticks and the same type of paper I used before. So as you saw, I added 3 additional shelves, and now I will be adding this piece that looks very much like a broken mirror, but actually it's just a stepped on CD. I found it on one of my walks and I thought it was perfect for this project. A little bit of this alcohol ink to age up the little handle I added earlier, a little bit on those washers, and I think my box on its own is pretty much done. It had quite a transformation and I'm very happy with the way it came out. So far so good, but now of course I have to fill it up. And here I am just showing you some of the elements I will be working with. I won't be able to show you every little detail because a lot of it was really just aging these pieces up and then finding a good way to glue them down. So there are glass bottles in different sizes. There's a very unusual glass shape here. I have broken jewelry pieces like always, little domes. I have some skulls, I have some bones, I have an old skeleton. Now I won't even be using all of these pieces. At that point, I really didn't know exactly what would fit or what would look best. But these were the items I started with. I realized already that my glass bottles have a very tight opening, so I wasn't sure what would fit into it. So I pulled out some tiny pieces of metal. I will also use some sand, I will use rocks, I will use beads and those kind of things. I happen to have these little skull beads and I will use some of them for decoration as well. Then let's see what else we have over here. I have some little figurines, the owl and the little cat. I have a little lantern here. And this eyeball, I actually bought it once at a store because I thought it was so cool and I knew one day I would use it. This is a single earring, as you can see, but it's a full skeleton. So that's cool. That can fit really well. And I picked up some of these very cheap Halloween rings for kids. There are some bats, there are also some tiny spiders and so on. I have some bigger animals that may fit in some of the glasses, jewelry beads, some other things from my jewelry stash that might or might not make it into the project. So I'm just showing you some things I pulled out. It's always nice to have a starting point, but you will see later not everything will reappear and I will add new things and different things as well. Now these are mushrooms, aren't they cute? So they're little white mushrooms, which I believe I can paint, and those will of course be part of my project as well. Then I did find these tiny labels for small bottles. They say poison on it and this and that. And I think they would be perfect for some of the very tiny bottles. I think only the bigger size there because some of those tiny, tiny labels are too small. So I might use those and let's see what else we have. I may also use some of the labels that came with that paper pack on some things, although they may be a bit too big. There are also some of these photographs. I might use one somewhere. Let's just see. First of all, I start with some of my items. This was a little container. I think it's a Halloween toy, but it had the spider web on it, and I was able to color it with my permanent ink and then add a proper spider on it. And of course, this will give me one of the orange elements I will be adding to my display. And next I added some of those skull beads underneath the stand of one of the domes, and I added some black gesso, a little bit of gold robin buff, and I think it came out pretty cool and it gave it some extra interest. Next I want to show you how I altered the bottles. In order to make them look old, I add a little bit of alcohol and some alcohol ink. I just kind of swirl it around, and then the excess I just pour into the next bottle so I can use it to color that one as well. And I find the best thing to do is to dry it pretty much right away, because if you let it stand, the alcohol will just gather at the bottom. So different colors, of course, give different effects. I made some lighter, others darker, like you can see on these two domes here. Then I had this slightly bigger skull bead, and I added it to a cabochon, which is orange, and a little bead just to hold it up and to make that whole piece a little bigger, and it gets a little bit of black paint. Here I added one of the bats to a little dice just so I can glue it down more easily. And yes, these orange spiders get a bit of alcohol as well, just to make a bit darker. And now a jump ahead. I completed all my little doodads and I'll show you what I came up with. I used some simple foam paper to make these books. I made a bunch of them. Some have one layer, some have two, one had three layers. All of them have a faux leather or fabric covering, some lettering, a bit of distress ink. And here are the bottles. You can see I gave them all some labels. They have different ingredients. And I realized that it was really hard to add anything bigger. This is one of the few bottles I squeezed one of those skeleton hands inside of it. The rest are mostly beads, colored sand. There are, as I said earlier, rocks and some metal components, all tiny things. This was another one of those Halloween kitty rings, and it was a skull, so I added it there. And here I actually only added some hot glue and some alcohol ink, and I think it gives that slime effect quite cool. And here's also that funny looking glass piece. And then I found this tiny little picture frame. I had it for a while. I distressed it to make it look old and added one of those photos. These items you've seen earlier. Then I had an orange light bulb. It went into a bottle top as a little piece of jewelry. This is a tiny salt shaker. I took the top off and added a bead with that eye shape. And yes, I had some of this spider web materials that you use for Halloween, and I stuffed it in some of the containers. Here is the bat inside one of the domes. The second one has a big skull and the orange cabochon on the bottom. Then there is a big eyeball, which I mounted on a gear and a spool and gave it a little danger sign in the back. Here is a little spider, and that little container looks a bit like a petri dish. So I used another one for my tiny mushrooms. I was able to color them in quite easily, and I'm happy with the way they look. So these are most of the things I will be using. I may be adding some of these other little miniature doodads you see here, but I think it will become more clear after I see how everything fits. Now I did already add a few things to the cabinet. This resin face on the top, a little loop here because I want to add a dangle. I used the same kind of loop to hang up the skeleton, and it got a little bit of gold robin buff on it. To see it better, I added two bats in the back. They also came from those children Halloween finger rings. And here is another of those loops which holds up a jewelry piece that looks like the jawbone of a shark. I added a clock face to the back. And then the little spider over there, there's a little illustration of a bug and a skeleton face. Otherwise, it's still the same way you saw it earlier. I did add the hanger in the back. I used a sturdy piece of chain and two very sturdy jump rings that hold it in place. I also added one of the bigger labels that reads poison. And then, of course, it was time to glue everything in its place, and it really took a while until I found the right combination where everything looked good, the shelves were full, and I was happy with the outcome. So here's my dangle made simply from a chain, three tiny green bottles, and a key. And next I give you a bit of an overall look of what the outside of the cabinet is like. There's that little handle I added and the closure. And now, of course, we will get to have a closer look to the inside. I actually slowed down this video. I took it outside so you have better light and I can hang this thing up. I took it with my phone, so the quality is not super, but I think this was a better way of showing you the overall effect. So here's the label and the grunginess on the door. Then there is my little owl, which fits so perfectly. There's a little orange acorn, the hand in the bottle, my snake poison, my cute little mushrooms. There are some bones, there are some crystals, and the other skull in the dome. There's a top of the salt shaker, some bones, cabochons. There are the books and the other part of the salt shaker. All the little bottles, most are closed. Some have a little spoon in it. There is my picture. There is another container with bones and skulls, and the bottle with a chain hanging down. Here is a close-up of the bigger pieces you saw earlier. There's my little lamp made from the orange light bulb, my little spider, the other dome with the bat inside. You can see the label on the eye in the little mirror. I filled in some of the spaces with the bones I had. Then here on the bottom there is more bottles, as you can see, and details in the tiny shelf. I found a tiny vase. There is a pencil, a wrench, some dye. There's a coffee cup and a light bulb, and then the jewelry spilling out there in the back. So those are all the things I added to my apothecary. I really hope that you caught all the details and it gave you some ideas. Here are some photos, but of course it is just about time to look at all of your wonderful creations. So here, without further ado, is the lineup I hope you have been waiting for. Take your time, look at all the details, and enjoy. So as you could see from the lineup, I received lots of great entries from many of you, and I think most of us dipped our toes into the scary and slightly creepy department, and that's fun once in a while. So thank you very much for playing along, and I want to invite you to join in again to the November 4-core challenge. Now, if you are new to the challenges, please just go below in my box, follow the link to the intro video, and there you will find all the details you need. So let's get started with the November 4-core art challenge. Now, for many of us, November is a time where we think about winter, the snow, we think about the upcoming holidays, and of course those kind of things can affect what we would like to create during this season. So I want to make a little room for that. On the other hand, there are also many of you who live in other parts of the world where the season looks very different. There's no snow, there's sun, maybe you celebrate completely different type of holidays. So I don't want to set a theme that is very tight. I want to keep it very open so you can take it in all kinds of different directions. So I was thinking we could create a scene or a scenery, and it could be a landscape, it could be a cityscape, it could be inside a house, a room, a street, it could be by the lake, in the mountains, in the summer, in the winter, day or night. Lots of possibility. If you want to take it into the wintry and festive mode, that's a good opportunity to do so, but everything goes. Now, it could be a painting or collage, meaning you would work two-dimensional, but you can also work three-dimensional. Maybe you like to create a diorama. It could also be a scene or scenery that is just displayed on a shelf or on a table. All that is up to you. If you prefer the two-dimensional approach, of course, use whatever substrate you like to work on and what you have available. Any size or shape will do. Now, if you go the collage route, I just pulled out a few little examples, just what you could include. So here's an interesting image of these two people hugging. Now, you don't have to include people, but of course you can. Then, of course, landscapes. You can find things that you can combine. There's an ocean, there is some sky with pretty clouds. There's an old-fashioned barn. We have a whole little city here at the ocean on a hill, another house. Of course, all kinds of decorations you can use for fill-ins. And of course, the wintry scenes. I have an old holiday card here with a lake and some people that are skating, and some of these little die cuts. A little house and some little boys building a snowman. So these are just ideas. You look through your stash and I bet you come up with something. And of course, if you are a painter, you can just paint a lovely picture for us. Now, of course, in all of this, we want to have some elements in common. So aside from creating either a painting or a collage or a diorama or something along those lines, we will all include a lamppost. Now, the lamppost could be hand-painted. I made this one for an old collage page. You could find an image, again, as a collage piece. Or maybe you have something else, a stencil or a stamp. I happen to have this little stamp here forever. I don't use it very often, but it's a cute little image of a lamppost. And lampposts can look very modern. They can look vintage. Whatever fits to your creation. So let's put this away. So the first thing we all include is a lamppost. It could be prominent, it could be more in the background, as you like. Second thing we will include, or the third, let's say the third point in our 4-core challenge, would be to include an animal. I don't think we worked with animals much, so maybe this is a good opportunity. Now, there's a little trick to that because we will use a white animal. So if you can find an image, or you can paint or draw an image, it could be a polar bear like this, it could be a swan. Sometimes you find images that are not completely white, but you could lighten it, you could paint over it. So here is a horse, and here's also this cute little seal that would work for that kind of technique. Or you could do a white silhouette. So if you have black silhouettes, just cut them out and use the other side. If it's not white, then just paint it white, and you will have a white silhouette or white animal. Now if you go three-dimensional, maybe you have a little figurine. I happen to have this cute little white cat, so that would work. So in other words, an animal of your choice, a white animal. Now many animals are naturally white, but you know, there's always that case of an albino. So if you want to draw a white crocodile, that's perfectly fine. So that was part 3. And for part 4, something a bit more easy, we will include stripes somewhere. They can be painted, they can be drawn, you can use your ruler, you can add fabric. Maybe you have striped fabric. I found this striped ribbon here, and there is a little paper bag that has stripes, and then just some craft paper that have interesting stripes. So again, how much or how little you want to use of the stripes, it's up to you, but it should be visible to us. So that's it. So let me just review. We create a scene or a scenery. It could be a landscape, a cityscape, it could be whatever you like it to be. It could be 2 or 3 dimensional. You can paint, you can collage, you can assemble, whatever you prefer. Then we will add these 3 elements to our creations. A lamppost, some stripes, well, let's do it this way, the way I had it first. A lamppost, a white animal of your choice, and some stripes somewhere. So like I said earlier, if you want to go into the holiday mood and you want to create something festive, that's great, that would be fun to see. But if you want to do something a bit more neutral or represent the holidays you celebrate, then that's great as well. So I cannot wait to see your entries. Like always, you have the rest of the months to work on it and send me your photos. If you have any question concerning the challenge, just please ask me either below in the comments or write me an email. So like always, there will be a list of these items at the end of the video, as well as below in my box, just for your easy reference. So I want to thank you for coming, for playing along. I see you soon again, latest by next Friday. Stay well and creative, and bye bye for now.